Hey everybody, thanks Amy. Thanks everyone for joining us today. The 2022 R1 release is an event that we look forward to every spring with Acumatica. And like all of the others preceding it, they certainly didn't disappoint as they added new functionality and really worked to enhance the product and really address some of the needs that they were seeing in the marketplace. Now, that was not an intentional pun, by the way, but the first thing I want to talk about is in the Acumatica marketplace. So you may or may not be aware that the Acumatica marketplace is where third-party products, ISVs, independent software vendors, offer their solution to extend functionality with Acumatica. And in that, there are some great things in the marketplace to help you as you're looking for additional help as you want to have Acumatica do more for you with these partners. And one of the things that I want to make sure that you're aware of is there's in the search here, as you look, there's a certification section. And this is where you can see there are really two main certifications that you should be interested in. And one of them is the always current certification. And so as Acumatica is looking at managing the rollouts of system updates, and the build updates periodically to keep you on current code, look for the ISVs and the solutions that have the always current certification. That means they've met the development standards that Acumatica has to fully test and make their product everything that it needs to be to work with the new release. And then also they have a current version release. And so this is where these products have all gone on to get certified on the 22R1 release. And so as you're looking and planning your upgrade to 22R1, you can be confident that those particular ISV solutions that you may be looking at, or maybe you already have them in place, are ready for you to use, and they're not going to hold up your upgrade process. So that's the marketplace integration that we wanted to talk about. I want to make sure you're up on the certifications. The next thing, we're going to go into Acumatica, but instead of the desktop version, this is where I want to spend some time showing you the mobile version. And let me see if I can get technology to work here. We hope we can. There it is. Look at that. And we're going to bring up the new Acumatica app. They've done a lot of work on the app to help it really more closely mirror what you have on your desktop experience as well. And so if you look here, you see a familiar word called workspaces. So Acumatica has added workspace support to the mobile app. Whereas before you would have the little icon panels that would, you would launch from, and then they moved that a little bit to a different form of panel. Now you have full workspace support. There's a configuration grid and table inside of Acumatica that will help manage which workspaces you want to make available on the app. So you can have full control over that. And in that, they also changed their user interface, to make it simpler, in that they've given you options. So one of the things that we use the Acumatica app for on a regular basis are expense receipts. So in this now, instead of opening up the expense receipts, and seeing the entire list, and you'll notice I still have down on the bottom, I have my camera so that I can take a picture of my receipt, or I can manually add one. But now I don't have to take that extra click, and I can choose the ellipse next to the option, and it gives me those add and create options from the first layer. So it's saving some clicks and saving some steps. Now as we look at another feature that they have here, it keeps track of your recently visited screens. And so this is something that we had they added to the desktop product so that you can see your screens to go back to that record you were just looking at very easily instead of having to use the normal search process. So they're making it easier for you to get back and see what you've done as well. One of the things that they've added that really has enhanced the usability of the app is not only the full dashboard support, but now you can add KPIs either on your home screen, like we'll do here, select the add a KPI, and then find that one KPI that's important to you, select it from the list, click done, and so it adds that to that home screen. Okay, so these are those things that you want to keep track of on a regular basis. But at the same time, if we go into purchases, I can go ahead and add a separate KPI tile on the purchases workspace. Okay, so now I can have specific KPIs, so I don't have to look through a longer display of them to find the ones that I want. So again, Acumatica has spent a great deal of time working and improving the mobile user interface, with the workspace support and especially the adding of the KPI tiles. So take a look at that. If you're not using the mobile app, now is a great time to start, upgrade your system to 22R1, load the mobile app, and you're on your way to being much more efficient with it. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window down then and give you some pause so you can make some notes or think about questions that you might want to answer. I hope you all join us for some Q&A afterwards. The next thing I want to talk to you about, where Acumatica has done a strong move, is the creation of blanket sales orders. And the blanket sales order solves a couple different things for Acumatica. And one of those is being able to plan ahead with where you have multiple releases against a sales order, but to multiple locations. And so what I want to do is walk through just some of the functionality and how this works inside of the new blanket sales order. So as you see here, this is something that you can't do on a regular sales order. Here I've got separate ship to locations on my sales order for the same item. Okay? And so this then allows for planning. I think there was a great example at Acumatica Summit, if you went to that, where a school district was purchasing for multiple deliveries to multiple schools throughout the different sports seasons. So that's a great example. This helps you, lock in contract pricing and do planning ahead for the distribution of these. Now, in this, what makes the blanket order special is what lies behind the particular sales order line. And if we look at the line details, okay, this is where you can do a couple different things. And that is, you can set up the schedule order date and ship date. And this is going to be useful as we look at how we're going to create these child orders and process them in the future. You can, what inventory warehouse are you going to allocate this from? And then you can split the quantity. So I had 20 on my sales order line on the blanket order, and I'm going to split that up into 2 different deliveries. Now, one of the things that Acumatica carries over into these child orders off a blanket order is the ability for you to make to purchase to buy, or buy to order. Sorry about that. So you can actually set this up so it'll create the purchase order, factoring in the vendor lead time and such, in order for you to fulfill this order on the schedule. Okay? And so this information driving the sales order is what's going to really feed the rest of the process. Okay. Now, the one thing that you can also do is you can mark these lines for production. So if this is going to be a make to order stock, you can add them and have them create the production orders as well. So those are some of the highlights. Now, once you've created this, one of the things that they've added is on the process orders grid, they've added an option on the actions to create the child orders. Okay. And so here, this is our blanket sales order. So it found some scheduled order dates that are on or before my end date. So it's going to create a scheduled order for the ones that I select. So if I go ahead and select my baby stuff order and I click process, it's going to go through, look at everything that's on the sales order. Oh, and it came up with an error. And don't you hate it when that happens? All right, so I must have done something wrong on this one, and I apologize. But nonetheless, so we've got a lot of ground to cover, so we'll move forward. We'll try another one, see if that works. Otherwise, I may just not know how to make blanket sales orders work. How about that? Okay, so we did there, that one worked. So if we close and we go back to our sales order list, here's a new sales order that was created from our blanket order. So this blanket order is carrying over. So if we look at our blanket order, and now that we've created the blanket order and we look at the line details, we can see that now we do have quantity on order. Okay, so the blanket order was saying we needed to ship a half a ton of this, and it converted this and created the child sales order, so for the half a ton. And if we go back and we'll close that, we go back to our sales order that was created. We now see that these are the items that were on the parent order. Here's the half of ton for that line that we looked at. So now we have this sales order that we can process through and create shipments against as a normal order. So at this point, this order becomes a single order that follows the normal Acumatica processing. So if we go back to the original blanket sales order, now let's look and we can see some of the details that we have behind it. And you can see here that now we can see that there are no quantities available on the blanket order, and that there are quantities on the order. So we can see that there's blanket orders for all of the rest of the, anything that has left to ship on that blanket order. we can view from that blanket order line and help manage that and look at expectations for the customer and plan ahead as well. So the blanket order functionality is something new. It's something that people have asked for, and Acumatica once again delivered. So think of questions that you have on that, and again, we can answer those in the Q&A when I finish up here. The next thing that I want to talk about and show is the addition of a manufacturing control point on the bill of material or production order. And so in that, we'll go ahead and look at some of the building blocks here. And what the manufacturing control point does is it allows you to add a control point, and I'll pick work center here. And what the control point does is, as we mark it there, the control point is going to set a place on the production routing that controls the quantity that's able to be reported on the production order. Okay. Now, if you're familiar with Macola or with the manufacturing in Acumatica, you have options on the production order type as to whether or not you want to allow the order to be over completed. So you can overproduce on the order. And that's certainly possible if you have that set to yes or worn. But if you're using that in conjunction with backflushing of labor and materials, okay, you use backflushing of labor and materials really for ease of data entry. So your production floor doesn't have to do particular material issues or labor transactions because you're working against a standard. And so it makes the data entry very easy. But even though you can't produce in Acumatica, if you have the flag checked that you can't overproduce a production order, and that's only on the last operation. And so as we'll look at here, if you have a production order that has 10, but it has 3 steps, so steps 10, 20, and 30, and the first operation reports 10, but the second operation fat fingers it and reports 100, and the third operation doesn't realize that 100 were reported, even though there's just 10 physically sitting in front of them. They report 10. It will complete the work order, and you'll have a large WIP variance because when you report the 100 on the second operation, it backflushes all of the labor and material from the first operation as well. Okay? And so the control point is going to solve that issue. It's going to let you continue to use the backflushing functionality for ease of entry, but it's going to add that management feature that's going to keep people from over-reporting and fat fingering. So again, we'll take a look at this. It's set up on the work center, but again, that then defaults into the bill of materials. And on the bill of materials, you can override it. You can do the same thing on a production order. So if I find my routing here, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my the 2 items that we'll look here. So this is my MG base, and you notice that none of the operations are set to control point. Okay. Now I'm going to find my favorite MG widget, and you'll see that on this bill of material, the first operation is set as a control point. Now, so what we'll do in the demonstration to show how this works is I'm going to create a production order for each of them, and then I'm going to go do a move transaction against each one of these on the first operation, and then go to the second operation and try to report an extra quantity. So if we go over to our production orders and we see what we have available here, Okay, so I've got my work orders here for an MG widget and an MG base. So I'll start with the MG base, and this would be the functionality pre-control point. So I'll do a move transaction on the first operation. Okay, so 1, 2, and we're going to report a quantity of 10, okay, which is the quantity on the work order. So we'll take that off hold and release it. And as it's processing, what I'll do next is I'm going to go and report on the second operation, but I'm going to be, act as Leroy Trombone out on your production floor, and I'm going to accidentally, because nobody ever makes the mistakes on purpose, pick that same production order. Now here's the next operation, and I'm going to say I did 100 of them. Okay, so this is the MG base. Okay, now you see where I've got that previous control point. So apparently I set the control point up on that production order. So again, taking you through some of the things you may not be familiar with is that on the bill of materials is copied into the production order, and I can expand and show my control point. So it's on the operation description, and I actually have a control point on that. So I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to switch up work orders. So you saw how that control point worked. I tried to do 100, and it didn't allow me to do 100 because it's greater than the previous control point. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go in and kind of cheat the screen here, and I'm going to pull up my production order for my MG widget. I need to release it. And now if I go back to that, this is where I'll change my control point to show you can override those during the, I'll go ahead and plan it because I needed to do that. So we're going to plan the order. I'll go into the production detail. So again, this is where I can set my control points. So I'm going to take off the control point on the first operation. Okay. And now I'll go back to the production order, and I'll release it. And I'll go to my move screen. And I'll pull up the production order for the widget. And again, I'm going to report 10. That's the quantity on the order. And release it. So this is back flushing the material and the labor associated with that. Now I'll go ahead and add another one. I'll show you that you can, now we have the operation 20. I'm going to fat finger 100. And I'm going to release it. And so this is from the quantity remaining. So I have a production order type that's set that it's not going to allow me to overproduce. So that then is an oversight on my part. But you saw that on the control point, we were able to stop people from over-reporting. I have a customer that this has been a problem with them because when they moved from Acumatica made it easier for the shop floor to report the production, and sometimes they fat finger it. So they're going to get some real benefit out of the need and the use for these control points in manufacturing. So sorry that didn't go exactly the way that I had it planned. I should have done a little more testing instead of using what I thought were already standard objects. So I appreciate your understanding there. So we took a look at a few things. One, the marketplace, the Acumatica marketplace, to make sure that you've got a great selection of ISV solutions and they're keeping current with the Acumatica product as Acumatica develops and enhances the product with each of their semi-annual releases. We took a look at the mobile app. Big changes on the mobile app, huge advancements in the user interface. And so that's something that we can all leverage and look forward to. The blanket sales orders, in processing those, so that you can really handle some of the needs that your customers are asking for, multiple releases off of a sales order, shipping to multiple locations as well. And then we took a look at the manufacturing control points that show, let you keep the ease of backflushing labors and material, but start to add that management point and the control point, as it's titled, to keep people from overproducing and creating WIP variances as they go along that then have to be corrected later to be more efficient. So appreciate your time. I'm going to give it looks like we're going to give you back some time or so we can get right to the Q&A. So I'll see you over at the Q&A in just a minute. I've got to do some technical things here, but I'll meet you over there. Don't forget to go to the Sessions tab and click the Q&A.